Okay guys, first of all, Spadia is not just a YouTube channel. We have also digital products, physical products, which are going to help you about everything we talk about in these videos. You can find two links in the descriptions below. And now let's get back to the video you came here to actually watch. Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we'll be continuing with our own performance, and we will be now talking about how you can leverage the chemicals which are now talking about adrenaline and dopamine to increase your performance and output, both fitness and the business sense of the world. So it's going to be a slight continuation of the dopamine, what we've talked about in many previous episodes before, but this is going to be a different take also to leverage on how to leverage adrenaline and to maximize your performance output. Now, what I want to basically emphasize is that for fitness, this isn't just going to be applicable to hypertrophy training, but we are talking also about strength training, power output, or even improving your speed. So basically, how are you able to outburst and continue with your speed, for example, in cardio as well, or even with doing the compound lifts, and how your speed improves in that. And for the business sense, on the other hand, this again applies also to your workplace, to you having your own business, to any studies you might have, and everything accompanying that. Now, what I've written down for you guys is that what we actually need to talk about is first why we would actually even group these two chemicals together. And what I want to emphasize especially is that how adrenaline helps you, and I will come back to thousands of years ago of evolution, which I think always this example is getting brought up many times, is that adrenaline helps you to move out of the place you are in right now. How it worked in the past is that thousands of years ago is that if you're attacked by a tiger, for example, if your adrenaline didn't spike up, you will have stayed in the same place or moved at reasonable pace, you will have been wiped out. With adrenaline really bumping up, you will be running as hell as fast as you can, or you'll be fighting as hard as you can. And this is then why those genes have been then passed on to make the adrenaline pretty much the flight or fight, a tool or chemical for you to use. Now, obviously, I think we also acknowledge that nowadays we don't have such situations, and it might not even be that much worthwhile to have it, but it's still within us. And I think we have the consequences of that adrenaline, especially in times when we have some meeting coming, when we have some event coming up, when we have, for example, date coming up. For some guys that they might be so stressed that they are getting this response of flight or fight, and they just don't know what next to do. And the way you can improve your performance, and this is going to be the talk of this episode, is to be able to control those situations much more easily by basically making your own system be already prepared for them, and to have already experienced them before in a much more reasonable way, where, for example, failing in some very important meetings might cost you all the hard-earned cash you would have otherwise gotten. But for example, you will have some activities where you don't have such high stakes, and you can do those, and will make you much more likely to be able to use these chemicals to your advantage instead of, let's say, being a slave to them. So the reason why I still bring them up both in terms of adrenaline and dopamine is that they both act in a way to make you more likely to perform an activity. So dopamine works as a reinforcer, and what this means is that if you go once to the gym, twice to the gym, you like it, you are more likely to come back to it. The dopamine also works in an opposite way, is that if, for example, you are trying to find a job, you are trying to do a particular task, but nothing is working, it's not going to be increased, because if it was in those particular activities, it would make you just more likely to do the same thing which doesn't work. So pretty much dopamine is your biggest friend behind motivation on that end, is that if something doesn't work, it's not going to be released at such high rates, which will make you want to do something else, want to find a better solution. And in those scenarios, we usually feel worse when nothing works, and this is because the dopamine isn't released at that high rate, and it forces you to feel worse, but to also be more uncomfortable in your skin and to want to find a different solution for yourself. So this is how they both interact. As adrenaline, on the other hand, if you have really something important in your own sense, or something that is very let's say on the danger side for you coming up, you will have these huge spikes of adrenaline inside of yourself, and it's going to make you really amped up to actually do something, to either fight or flight, or usually think about it, either going to the meeting and just owning it, or going to the meeting and being really basically down about it. So, or even in any other activity, just meeting is just one example I will have for you. Some events, for example, happen quite a bit often, and this is a byproduct of the evolution of many thousands, hundred thousands of years of adrenaline being selected for. These are the people who were able to manufacture it, so this is why we actually have that. Now coming back to next, what we actually want to figure out is that how can you actually leverage your adrenaline and dopamine systems to be able to then perform better. So I want to point out one thing is that nowadays we quite a bit live cookie cutter lives, and what that means is that we are trying to shield ourselves from being stressed heavily. For example, a lot of people stay inside a lot more often. We don't go outside as much. We don't prepare our immune systems and on the other hand our entire brain to be able to deal with, for example, the cold outside, to be able to deal with the stressors. And this has a safety effect when you aren't exposed to it, but because you aren't exposed to it, then even some mundane things which you'll think about, for example, as having a meeting, a photo shoot coming up. I've seen lots of girls who are stressed about it, which is basically just a photo shoot. It isn't anything happening to your own life. Do you know what I mean? That will actually make you lose something. Well, even those situations will become stressful because you are shielded from many of the stresses you would have had usually. On that hand, that you aren't able to deal with just basic mundane events quite at all. Now, there is something beautiful I will say next, is that you are able to improve your performance and especially your likeliness to do particular activities by being able to leverage this adrenaline and dopamine systems much better. So, since we've talked about the usual stressors of being adrenaline, there is also a part of it where cortisol applies. Now, cortisol, on the other hand, is something that also helps, for example, your immune system, and it also spikes up after you do a particular activity which had been outside of your comfort zone. But the comfort zone is the something I want you guys to pick up on at the moment, because it's the largest thing you have to take care of, and it's going to make you amped up to do pretty much anything you would have liked to. Now, what I've written down for you is that going outside of your comfort zone is something that is more easily than done, but you want to do it in places where the stakes aren't as high. So I will mention two things, is that because you want to be able to handle these adrenaline increases quite well, you want to handle these adrenaline increases first in the places or habits or activities where you aren't about to lose your entire life in it if you actually perform it badly in that sense. So what we actually can think of is that adrenaline gets spiked up in times when you're going outside of your perceived comfort zone. And what this means is that even, for example, for someone going outside might be something going out of their comfort zone. So, okay, that's quite easy to do. It's not like they are going to lose their lives. However, if they are also stressed about having a particular business meeting, which is virtual on that end, and they perform badly, and they might lose the deal. So this is something that will actually make them actually lose out on something. But the beautiful thing about this is that if you are able to take care of those things when you are stressed about, for example, as going outside or going for a jog when it's cold during winter, and you're able to overcome that, then in the same days or weeks, also overcoming the difficult meetings, events, or dates coming up for guys, it's going to be much more easier because you have in your own brain and your own mindset that you are able to deal with going outside of your comfort zone earlier. And since the stakes weren't that high, even if you fail at that, it won't have mattered because you actually tried. Now, in the business sense, this is going to help you to basically perform much better inside the meetings, inside of your own work. You are going to be more likely to take on a leadership role on that hand, because you are more confident in your own ability to actually get shit done, even though you might not even know how to do it, you might not know what to expect. And this is also the way it works, and I especially emphasize this cold exposure of going outside on jogs, because not a lot of people can do it, and it's also an additional effect of being able to do what other people can't, and it spikes your adrenaline high, because your own system doesn't want to be outside in the cold, because if you stay in the cold you would pretty much pass out in that hand if you stay outside too long. So your body automatically releases lots of chemicals to make you move. So this is what adrenaline does, and to make you move to get into a safe place. But if you are able to overcome that and stay, for example, in the cold for longer by doing a jog, you are going outside of your own perceived comfort zone, as long as you also do it and lay it down safely for not too many hours. But if you accomplish that, then later in the day or on every other day, if you do that, if you then come back to your work and you are about to do some tasks or activities which you might not even know how to do, but you are going to be much more confident that even if you might feel stressed about it slightly, you are just easily able to overcome that, and the stress might not even come because you know you are able to overcome those topics. So this is one thing you can leverage it more on the passive side, but you definitely want to check out and know that you are able to increase your performance in your work by, for example, even by half. So for example, if a previous thing used to take you 4 hours because you are stressed about it, you weren't sure if that's how exactly it should be, you weren't sure if you've prepared enough for a meeting, well, if you take care of your adrenaline levels by, for example, going outside of your usual work, outside on a jog, cold showers also work, or any additional stressors, like for example very hot environments, as saunas also work for that, is that you will be able to take care of your levels of high adrenaline, and then you will be able to just massively increase the performance at your work or at your studies or anywhere else, also in your fitness too, because you pretty much have this, I will even call it bravado about you to actually do shit. So that is actually pretty cool, and do what you want and what you will with it, guys. Additional thing I want to point out is that I will sum up now breathing protocols in less than 2 minutes for you, and all of them. One thing I will mention is that if you want to feel more calm, you want to breathe in more air than you exhale, and if you want to feel more amped up, you want to breathe out and or exhale more than you inhale. Now the reason why this actually works this way is because your brain wants to, or your own system wants to be in more of a safe environment, and it wants to have enough oxygen to then exhale the CO2 or the waste from your body to exhale. So for example, this is also how fat burning works, and we can also touch upon that in completely different episodes. But when you are losing fat, you are breathing it out, and you need oxygen to actually get the fat out of your system. So this is the 101 on how fat burning also works, as a side tangent, but to not get much into that. This is the reason why your own basically system wants to get as much oxygen as it wants. Now, if you are breathing more than you exhale, you are getting excess of oxygen in your own body, so your own system gets more calm to make you breathe less. If you are exhaling more than you breathe in, you will get amped up because your own system perceives that it doesn't or isn't getting enough oxygen to be able to actually function correctly. So it wants you to move out of that place because for some reason you aren't getting enough oxygen in that spot. So it wants to move you, because if you stay in that spot and if you aren't able to get enough oxygen, you will just pass out in that spot, and it can be quite a bit dangerous for you. So this is why, again, adrenaline works as this way to make you move out of the place you are in into something else, and this is why you'll feel a lot of times maybe even jittery when you have something coming up, because you need to move from that, and that's how your brain perceives that. So this is the breathing protocol summed up in less than 2 minutes, and what you actually can do with this is that this also relates to the cyclic breathing, which is all of times mentioned, but particularly if you want to feel absolutely calm, you can do it for, let's say, 30 seconds up to a couple of minutes to basically breathe twice and then exhale once. This can take, one cycle of this can take maybe 8 seconds, 10 seconds for you. So you can just basically use this if you want to feel more calm, or if you want to feel really amped up. And be careful about this with this as well, because it can get you into a dangerous situation if you do it for too long. Let's say 5+ minutes, I would already watch out for that. is that if you double exhale and inhale once, that is something that will make you really amped up to basically just do whatever the hell you actually want at the same time, because your own system perceives that you need to move, you need to do something to actually get out of the situation you are in, because you aren't getting enough oxygen on that end. So with this, there are many different breathing protocols, but these two scenarios is exactly how all of them work, and this is how it's going to help you moving down forward. So this additional tool you can use. Now the second thing I'll mention again is that fasting helps you heavily to increase performance as well. Now we've talked about breathing seconds ago, and being able to basically switch between calm and switch between amped up states when you need it will absolutely help you in any work you want, because it allows you to pick and choose which one state you want. And breathing is, from my own observations, the biggest, if not the second biggest thing that you will use to immediately change your own mood and how your state is at the moment, because breathing is something that is being done all the time, so it's a huge impact on your mood levels at the moment and how you are feeling and if you want to do something or not. Now fasting is more of a long-term approach, but it also works in the immediate factors. Now the reason why I actually talk about fasting and everything this down as well is that it allows you to increase your adrenaline levels. Now coming back again to the topic of many thousands of years ago, if you weren't getting enough food, you would have to find it, you would have to move out of the place where you were in. So for example, if you weren't able to find anything to hand, anything to eat, you would have had to move a lot to actually find, to not starve out. So this is how adrenaline worked, and that many often we were just starving, not starving but fasting, so to say, a lot of times just to find and to be amped up to find the food we need. And this is why adrenaline levels are quite high, because adrenaline helps those people who actually did that to move and to find the prey, for example, and we were able to get the food we needed, the nutrition we needed to actually be able to go on with our lives and to then pass on those same genes. So nowadays we have the advice of eating 3 meals a day, so for example breakfast, lunch and dinner, but the issue with that is that doing that increases your serotonin levels. Now just to give you 101 on serotonin, what it does is that it makes you less likely to reach out for something. So it makes you, it's like, kind of imagine it's the opposite of adrenaline on that end, is that it allows you to basically not want to move as much, to basically conserve as much energy as you can and to be fine with what you have inside of your own reach. Now what I said twice inside of your own reach, because I mentioned how serotonin works. If something is at the arm's length of you, so you are able to reach for it, you will be still fine to do that particular activity. So if you have a phone near you and you have high serotonin, you will still be as likely to pick it up. If the phone is on the other side of the room and you have to go and get it, you will be less likely to go for it, because you have to expend much higher amounts of energy for that, and you actually have to go in there to pick it up back. So if you have really high serotonin, you will be less likely to do that. Okay, so if anything is in close proximity to you, which you can use now quite easily, serotonin won't really block that. But if something is in longer lengths, for example, even some goals of yours, if something really takes more effort to do, you're going to be less likely to actually go for it, because you are more satisfied with what you have if you have food in your stomach, which basically increases your serotonin on that hand. So this is why fasting is important, because fasting allows you to not have these high levels of serotonin, and they will make you more likely to move and to be amped up to actually do particular activities. This is why it improves your performance, because it doesn't just mean that you want to find food, although that's the main underlying cause of it, that you want to get food into your system, but it makes you amped up to do everything and anything you need at that moment. Now, this is why it works beautiful in every factor, is that then the reason why we don't want to really eat 3 times a day, or even let's say this breakfast, lunch and dinner example on that hand, is because it will make your serotonin to be pretty much higher all the time, or even we have this in between eating schedule as well, like snacks, which is pretty much the way we actually don't want to go. But the best way is to do fast. I mean, all of us fast when we sleep, because there's quite a long window during which food is already processed. So all of us fast pretty much every day, unless you have a very weird schedule. But what you want to then pick out is that you will have liked to fasted as much as possible, but not to the point that you will be eating your meals once a day. The best timing for having your food intake is between 4 and 6 hours, up to 4 and 8, but the best case really is 4 to 6. You can give or take 1 hour from that, as always, but that is the window during which you would have liked to eat, and then for the rest of the day you would be able to focus on any other activities you want. Now, this 4 to 6 hours window is best used if you decide, do I want to eat in the morning or at lunch, or do I want to eat at lunch and have a dinner? So just this, you have to pick out these two scenarios, and that will be the best case. Eating one meal a day based on the inputs I've told you now would make a lot more sense, but also that isn't the best case because of many other underlying causes of other increases of chemicals as well, is that if it won't make you feel as good than if you are eating the meals twice a day. So what you then have to remember is that actually getting those, for example, at lunch or on dinner, or eating them in the morning or at lunch, basically those two scenarios will be the best for you if you want to maximize your performance at your work and to not increase your serotonin levels by eating all day small portions, but to actually concise that into, let's say, 2 up to 3 smaller different portions of food. And it's your choice then if you want to have higher work output and higher performance in the morning. So then in that case you would be eating at lunch and at dinner, or you would like to perform much better in evenings and into night, so you will be eating in the mornings and in the middle of the day. So this additional way that then if you don't have food in your stomach, you are more likely to have increased adrenaline level because your own system wants you to move to do particular activities, and you can use that to your advantage to basically have better work output. And then in turn, with our other tools we've discussed, you will have been able to overcome your own stress levels by being able to overcome adrenaline, slightly cortisol. We mentioned that for one brief moment. And then also with the dopamine to be able to stay motivated to the particular activities, and to then be careful of the serotonin levels if you want to improve your performance, because serotonin will make you less likely to go out in those particular instances where it's increased, usually thanks to food. It will make you less likely to actually reach out for something that is outside of your own reach, even if that's a goal or a physical thing. So this is pretty much one-on-one of pretty much all the tools we wanted to do. We'll be continuing in the next videos or throughout this month, as this month on performance, on all the topics around that. But especially hope this video has been helpful for you guys, and thank you so much. See ya.